The house with the hidden morgue. They said the house had been abandoned for over 20 years. No one in the town could remember who built it or why it stood so far away from everything else, at the end of a dirt road that didn't even appear on modern maps. The structure itself looked normal from a distance, just an old two-story home with cracked walls and a tilted roof, but anyone who got close enough felt something wrong in the air, like the house was aware of being watched. That was why most people avoided it. But avoidance does not erase curiosity. In early autumn, a small urban exploration group decided to document the house for their channel. There were 4 of them: Daniel, the leader; Mira, the camera operator; Josh, the skeptic; and Lena, who always insisted that everything strange had a logical explanation. They arrived at sunset. The sky behind the house looked bruised, heavy with fading light. The wind didn't move the trees properly. It came in uneven bursts, like something breathing between the branches. "This is it," Daniel said, looking at the structure. "House number 17 on the list." "Doesn't feel like a house," Mira muttered while adjusting her camera. "Feels like it's waiting." Josh laughed nervously. "It's just old wood and paranoia. Let's get this done before dark." Lena was the first to notice the front door. It wasn't fully closed. A thin gap yawned open, as if the house had already invited them in. They stepped inside. The air changed immediately. It was colder, but not in a natural way. It felt layered, like multiple temperatures stacked on top of each other. The smell was the first thing that hit them. Cleaning chemicals mixed with something metallic underneath. Daniel frowned. "That's weird. Smells like a hospital." "No way," Josh said. "We're in a house." But Mira had already raised her camera. The footage showed dust, broken furniture, and long white sheets covering objects that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. But the sound was wrong. Even their footsteps sounded muffled, as if the house was swallowing them. They explored room by room. Living room, empty. Kitchen, rusted sink, nothing unusual. Bedrooms, all stripped bare, until they found the door at the end of the hallway. It was different from the others, thicker, reinforced, painted in a shade of gray that didn't match the rest of the house. And it had no handle, just a small metal plate with a single word scratched into it: restricted. Mira lowered her camera slightly. That's not normal for a house. Josh stepped closer and pushed it lightly. Probably just a storage room. But Daniel shook his head. "No, look at the hinges. This was sealed from the outside." Lena leaned in, studying the frame. "Or sealed to keep something in." A silence followed that none of them liked. Then, without warning, the door clicked. Not opened, unlocked, from the other side. They froze. Slowly, the door began to shift inward on its own, scraping against the floor as if it hadn't moved in years. A wave of colder air spilled out from the darkness beyond. Mira's camera adjusted automatically, and what it captured would later be described as impossible, because inside it wasn't a room, it was a morgue. Not a small one. A full underground medical facility stretched beneath the house, lit by flickering fluorescent lights that shouldn't have been working. Metal tables lined the walls. Old medical equipment stood in organized rows, covered in dust that somehow hadn't settled evenly. And on every table was a body. But none of them looked recent. They looked staged, like they had been placed there deliberately. "Okay," Josh whispered. "That's not a basement. That's a hospital." "A morgue," Lena corrected, her voice barely audible. "How is this under a house?" Mira asked, her camera still rolling. This doesn't make sense. There's no record of anything like this in town archives. The deeper they went, the more disturbing the details became. Every body had a tag attached to its wrist. Not names, dates. And all of them were recent. Too recent. Some were from this year. One was from last month. The air felt heavier the further they went, as if the structure itself was compressing around them. Then Josh stopped. "Guys?" His voice cracked. He pointed toward one of the tables. On it lay a body covered in a white sheet, but it was moving, very slightly, like it was breathing. Mira zoomed in with the camera. The sheet rose and fell slowly, rhythmically. Daniel shook his head. No, that's not possible." Lena stepped forward, her voice trembling. "It's alive." The lights flickered once, and in that single moment of darkness, the movement stopped. When the lights returned, the sheet was perfectly still. But something had changed. The tag on the wrist was now visible. Mira read it out loud. "It says, 'My name.'" Silence. Josh laughed nervously again, but it sounded broken. "That's not funny." "I didn't say it was a joke," Mira replied. Daniel grabbed the tag and pulled it closer to the camera. It was indisputable. Mira's full name, correct spelling, correct birth date, correct everything. Mira stepped back. "No, that's impossible. I've never been here before." But then the sound came, a soft metallic scraping from deeper inside the morgue, like a stretcher being moved, slowly, deliberately. All four of them turned toward the sound. At the far end of the facility, beyond rows of covered bodies, something was moving between the shadows. Not fast, not aggressive, just aware. Daniel raised his flashlight again, but Mira grabbed his arm. "Don't!" But it was too late. The light revealed a corridor they hadn't seen before, and at the end of it, another door. This one was open, and above it, a sign flickered weakly. "Observation room." "Who's observing?" Josh whispered. No one answered. They moved forward because there was nowhere else to go. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the floor was trying to hold them back. When they reached the observation room, they found old monitors lined up against the wall. All of them were turned on, all of them displaying live footage of themselves, standing in the morgue, from different angles, angles that no camera in Mira's hand could possibly capture. Daniel froze. "There's someone else here." Then one of the monitors flickered, and a message appeared. "You should not have opened it." The lights shut off. Complete darkness swallowed the room. Mira's camera switched to night vision automatically, and what it captured made her step back in horror. The bodies from the morgue were standing up, slowly, one by one, not like zombies, not like anything alive, more like they were remembering how to move. Josh started backing toward the door. "We need to leave, right now!" But the door behind them slammed shut on its own. A sound echoed through the entire structure, not a bang, a lock, from the outside. Then a voice came through the speakers in the room, calm, neutral, almost clinical. "Subject observation initiated." Daniel turned toward the monitors. "Who are you?" The voice responded instantly. "We are Cursed Company Archive Division, File Containment Unit." Lena whispered, "We're inside a file." The monitors changed again, now showing the four of them labeled individually. Subject 01, Daniel. Subject 02, Mira. Subject 03, Josh. Subject 04, Lena. And under Mira's name, it added something new. Status, deceased, pending confirmation. Mira shook her head violently. "No, I'm alive!" But the system didn't respond to her denial. Instead, the morgue footage returned. One of the bodies was no longer covered. It was sitting upright, looking directly at the camera, at them. Its face was partially decayed, but recognizable enough to understand the horror. It was Mira, but not the Mira standing in the room, a version of her that had already died. Josh began screaming, banging on the door. "Let us out!" The voice returned. "This file will now be closed." The monitors all switched off at once, and in the silence that followed, the sound of footsteps filled the room, coming from behind them, slow, close, inside the observation room, not outside. Lena was the first to turn around, and that was the last thing recorded, because the camera fell.
The house is still recording. The recovered footage from the hidden morgue was never meant to be released, but something inside the system refused to let the file disappear. The moment the last frame of File 001 went black, the archive did not shut down. It stayed active, as if waiting for something or someone to continue what had already begun. The official report claimed the house was empty when authorities arrived. No bodies, no underground facility, no sign of forced entry, just dust and silence. But that report was never verified because the team that entered the house that night never came back. Their equipment was found outside, neatly placed as if returned by something that understood ownership but not fear. Inside the main archive server, a corrupted file began rebuilding itself, frame by frame, without human interaction. Technicians tried to delete it, but every attempt only caused it to expand. New data appeared where nothing had existed before. New angles, new sounds, new recordings that no one remembered capturing. The system relabeled the footage automatically, File 002, and marked its status as ongoing, not recovered, not closed, but continuing. The first new frame showed the morgue again, but it was different. The arrangement of tables had changed.
The spacing between them was narrower, tighter, almost suffocating. The sheets covering the bodies were no longer still. They moved slightly, not enough to confirm life, but enough to deny death. The fluorescent lights flickered in irregular patterns, casting shadows that stretched longer than the objects creating them. The camera angle was lower this time, as if placed on the ground or held by something that was not standing upright. The audio returned slowly, first static, then a low mechanical hum, then breathing, not one source, but several, overlapping, uneven, inconsistent. The system timestamp showed no real date, just a continuous loop of numbers that never repeated. As the footage progressed, a figure entered the frame from the far corridor, not walking, not crawling, but shifting between positions as if frames were missing. Its body appeared incomplete, like something trying to form itself inside a recording. It stopped near one of the tables and tilted its head toward the sheet. The movement underneath immediately ceased, as if responding to its presence. The figure did not touch the body. It simply stood there, observing. Then the screen glitched violently for less than a second, and when it stabilized, the body on the table was gone. The sheet collapsed, flat, empty. The tag that had been attached to the wrist now lay on the metal surface. The camera zoomed slightly without instruction, focusing on the tag until the text became readable. Subject 02, Mira. Status confirmed. A loud metallic sound echoed through the facility, something heavy being dragged across the floor.
The camera shifted again, now facing the observation room door, the same door that had been locked in the previous file. It was open. The darkness inside was deeper than the rest of the morgue, swallowing the limited light around it, as if light itself could not remain inside. The audio spiked, and a voice returned, not distorted, not mechanical,
but calm, precise, almost human. This file was not meant to end, it said. The system did not create the archive created the system. The camera moved closer to the observation room. The breathing grew louder, syncing with the flickering lights. Each step forward caused a delay in the footage, like reality struggling to keep up with the recording. Inside the room, the monitors were active again, but this time they were not showing the explorers. They were showing empty spaces, hallways, rooms, angles that did not exist in the house. One monitor showed a staircase leading downward far deeper than the morgue. Another showed a room filled with identical tables stretching endlessly into darkness. And one showed something else. A chair placed in the center of a black room with a single figure sitting on it, facing away from the camera. The system labeled the screen Subject 05, awaiting. The camera approached the monitor slowly. The figure did not move, but the moment the camera got close enough, the head of the figure turned slightly, not fully, just enough to suggest awareness. Then the screen cut to black for exactly 3 seconds. When the image returned, the chair was empty. The camera pulled back abruptly.
A moment of reflection appeared on one of the broken screens, a figure standing directly behind the camera, tall, unmoving, featureless, then gone. The audio dropped into silence, complete, absolute silence. Even the static disappeared, and in that silence, a new line of text appeared across every monitor. You are now being recorded. The system timestamp reset to 0. The file name changed automatically. File 002 became File 002 continued, then File 002 active, then simply Archive live. Outside the house no longer existed. The land where it once stood was empty, undisturbed, as if nothing had ever been built there. But underground sensors placed weeks earlier continued transmitting data, movement, heat patterns, structural shifts. Something was still active below the surface. Something was still organizing, still recording, still waiting. Inside the final frame of the recovered footage, the morgue appeared once more. The tables were empty, the sheets folded neatly, the tools arranged with unnatural precision, everything clean, everything prepared, except for one table at the center of the room. A single body lay there uncovered, breathing slowly, its face hidden in shadow, its hand resting at its side, and attached to its wrist a tag printing new letters one by one. Subject 05, viewer status, processing. The breathing grew louder, matching the pace of the reader, as if the system was no longer observing the footage, but observing whoever was watching it. And just before the file cut completely, a final message appeared, faint, barely visible across the screen. Do not stop watching.